Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monday, January 15th, 2024 Field Tuning. Field Tuning is an offering that takes place in the Broom Radio Way every week on Monday. So, just in case you didn't get it the first time, it happens and takes place at 3:30 p.m. Louisiana time. And I trust y'all to do the time conversions from there if you're in a different time zone. And yeah, field tuning is basically my version of a divination, similar to like the way tarot readers like on YouTube or different platforms like will pull cards. That's kind of like the gist of this container. Sometimes I go in, sometimes I don't. It just depends on what the cards are asking. And I just want to thank everyone who's here live in particular because yeah, I feel like joining the containers live, like there's some sort of like one-to-one dynamic with the cards, and I've been noticing it too, like the more that I do field tuning, that like the cards like just tend to get more and more relevant, more and more kind of like pointed as time goes on. So I just want to appreciate y'all for kind of like showing up at these because I feel like they're more personal when you're in the live container. So with all that said, I pulled some cards for today's reading, and I pulled them a little bit of advance in advance and spent the majority of today kind of like meditating on them. So the first thing I'll do is kind of read out the cards and the order in which they came in. And then, yeah, I think I'm just going to flow forth from there and then offer the divination. So the first card in today's field tuning is the Lovers. The second card is the Justice card. The third card is the Nine of Wands in reverse. The fourth card is the Ten of Discs, which is like the Ten of Pentacles. The fifth card is the Seven of Swords in reverse. The next card after that is the Chariot in reverse. So we have a couple of reversals here. The next card after that is the Three of Swords. And finally, at the bottom of this pull in particular, the bottom of the deck, the card that was there was the Moon card in reverse. And the deck that I'm using for these cards are the Mother Peace Tarot. And then I also pulled one Oracle card to kind of ground and anchor this reading from the Beyond Lumeria deck. And that card that I pulled is card number 43, which is titled She of the Lotus. She of the Lotus. So I want to kind of just pause before I just like jump in and wonder, like, at face value, for you guys who are here live, you can feel free to unmute or chat. At face value, when you look at these cards, what is the first thing or first couple of things that may be evoked for you or might be coming up for you as you look at these cards? Even if it's just from their illustrations, even the order that they're in, I would love to just hold space for like first impressions or any messages that may be bubbling over for you all. And if there aren't any, it's no pressure. So we can dive right into the divination. But I took notes, you guys. They're super rough. And I was just kind of like musing on the cards today. I kind of sat with them for longer than I'm used to. Because one thing about me is I love opening an energetic portal. Just as much as I love opening an energetic portal, I love closing them. So so usually I'll pull the cards, do the reading, and then I'll close the container. Or like sometimes I'll do my own energy work based on the cards. But today something was like, sit with these cards for a little bit longer. And so for the first card, the lovers, the deck that, or the booklet that this deck comes with, positions the lovers as a card that represents the act of joining together with the intention of love. And so it could mean many different things, like partnership, business unions. It could also mean it could also represent like roommate situations. The lover cards can also reflect internal processes that we take on to balance our different sides, the different sides that we all have to ourselves. But also at its most basic primal level, the lover's card represents coming together for the purpose of loving. That's it. Like what it's a card that illustrates the journey that two people take to be in harmonious union, and also represents the work that each person does in order to remain in harmonious union. And I'm going to take a moment to read what Tiff said in the chat. Tiff said, it's a lot at first, but at first glance, with all the cards, love and justice, and gathering your squad to birth something, going back to get something you will need to birth a new thing, and linking with community. Ashe. Ashe, Tiff. That is honestly the gist of this reading. Honestly, like that's a great summary. If I had to summarize this reading in a couple of sentences, I think that would capture it perfectly. I appreciate you for saying that. So yeah, this lover's card, again, can point to, yeah, the work and the act and the sanctity that people do when they're in union with each other. The work that they do to sanctify unions is what I mean. It also points to unconscious desires, sensuality, transcending norms. And so the lover's card has a lot in it. And for some reason, in this particular context, I was really drawn to the idea of transcending norms, which I talk about a lot in field tuning. That's my vibe. That's like my personal vibe, me as a person. But I feel like this lover's card is particularly pointing to transcending norms that are within romantic union. And so in the book that accompanies this deck, there is this amazing write up. It's like a couple paragraphs long. Um, if you have the book, it's really good to look at. If not, I'll just kind of like briefly summarize for you. But they basically talk about how there was such a switch culturally when we look back in history, whenever the change of power from a more matriarchal society happened to the change of power from a matriarchal society to a patriarchal society, and how in a matriarchal society there were so many different markers or symbols that spoke to the union of two or more people in any given like romantic relationship. And then the book goes on to say um when that switch happened, when things became more patriarchal focused, that some of the societies and cultures that were part of that transition experienced like a brutal, like almost like stain on the way that they interpreted romantic love, where at some point, I guess in the matriarchal society, it was represented by like this freeing, unionizing act that also spoke to like love as a principle, and it like kind of switched into this like conqueror conquered like dynamic between not only just folks in love, but it kind of shifted the culture around the pursuit of love. So why do I bring that up? Well, because I feel like the lover's card is pointing to, it's so weird because like for me, I've been sitting with this card today and I'm like, I feel like it has something to do with how the playing field uh, regarding love and romance and the work that it takes in current time specifically to get a lover is like completely different than it was, or to like have a lover was completely different than it was maybe like 5-10 years ago. And so I want to pause and see like if y'all relate to that at all. And if so, like what are the things that you notice make it either more difficult or easy? I don't know. I don't know. Y'all may have it like that, or easier, or more difficult to prioritize a loving union, or even if it is, I don't know if it is your priority, but yeah, I just kind of wonder where y'all stand with the way that the dating world looks and the pursuit of love looks now from y'all's perspective. And you can feel free to write in the chat or unmute if it's easier to like talk through it. I see Tiff is typing, so I'm gonna hold space. Can't wait to see what she has to say. Tiff says and writes in the chat, I haven't done much dating to be honest, but I notice an unsureness about gender roles and an upset in the usual dating styles. Folks seem lost and confused as we figure out a new paradigm. Wow. Wow, Tiff. Wow. Yeah, I can really, really relate. I can really relate, especially to what you said about folks seeming lost and confused as we figure out a new paradigm, which I like, of course, part of me sympathizes with. And I'm also like, yeah, it's almost as if um, everyone kind of knows subconsciously or is like aware that things are different. And of course, um, so many like social, not only confines, but like what's the word I'm looking for? Like things within society have like changed so radically in the last couple of years. That to me it kind of makes sense because I also feel part of that, like that collective that's lost and confused. And so like I wanted to like hold space for that co-musing because when I was pulling these cards, that's kind of what it felt like. That's what it felt like a lot of passion and um like really like loving energy, but like not knowing where to put it is like kind of where what I got the gist from. And like it felt like spirit was like drawing my attention to that because first of all, I can relate. But secondly, I was like, dang, like maybe we are in a new paradigm or we're approaching a paradigm shift. And as this paradigm does shift, the way that we look at love, along with buku other things, is going to change as well. Um, and so it like really ties into the rest of the reading. But I feel like the first card sort of sets the table for us. And if there was a question in the air that was like, yo, how does one love in times like this? Then I feel like this spread is going to kind of help you digest the how to for yourself. I hope. I'm crossing my fingers when I say that. I'm like, I hope, because I could use the clarity too. Um, so yeah, staying with this kind of theme regarding love, regarding the actual work, sometimes backbreaking work it takes to like transcend norms in a couple, in a relationship, in a union with someone else, even just like a really close friendship. I can imagine that being really difficult. The next card that presents in this reading is the Justice card. And the Justice card is about setting things right and like setting things on a course to where all parties and all elements and all animals and all um flora and fauna are seen and included in this picture of not only the physical picture of justice, but this idea of like, what would a just world be? What would a just world include? And so for me, it was kind of like awe striking to see that the lovers card, or that the justice card was preceded by the lovers, because I'm like, wow, like, is there something ripening with the like the paradigm of love? Like, have we collectively, maybe some of us even on a personal level, or those of us who are living listening asynchronously, like, have we put love and like the nuances and the desires and like even the like unconscious parts of why we love, have we kind of like put those in a closet so that we can just carry forward? And if so, is that a world that we want to live in, right? Where love is like a static, transactional exchange of energies, and it doesn't have a container on its own as a sacred principle, right? So, what the hell am I talking about? I feel like justice basically speaks to how well, it speaks to, just like in the deck or the book, it speaks to finding one's place in the cosmic orchestration. So, like, kind of like finding your place in the world, and like finding your place in the grand scheme, in the microcosm. I mean, the macrocosm of like all of life, or all parts of your life, right? And so, like, justice is about like ripening things, like turning something a little to the left, to the right, to make sure that you get a square peg into a square peg. In other words, into a square hole. In other words, and so um, it speaks to like a resolution, but it because it's justice and because it's like a major arcana, I think for me it speaks to cosmic cosmic resolution, things being sorted out on a vaster level. Maybe many people are thinking about like, what would life look like without not only love but like desire, union, other people. And I think people, even if they saw that, they're like, nah, 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 I'm good, I don't want that. I'm good. I actually want a life with love. I want to set the table a little bit for the things that I care about. And so again, justice is like kind of having the sense right now in this context particular, I feel like it represents um the knowing that something is about to materialize. It's funny because I'm like, wow, I'm about to do a love reading, but I'm like, yeah, it feels like something is opening up for anyone who has felt a little bit locked away, or like kind of like their heart was closed off to not only receiving love but giving love. It feels like this justice card speaks to something about to materialize in that arena. Oh, I'm going to read what Tiff said. I think people have an internal conflict about how to make the smartest decisions in a world of negative intentions, while being open to the whimsical energy of falling in love and building trust. Mm. Thank you for saying that, Tiff. Internal conflict. Wow.
Yeah, I would like to elaborate. So,
Please, yeah.
I mean, having not been like too experienced in the dating world, like I don't think I date as much as the people be talking about they'd be dating. So, like, I see, like, for example, Twitter debates about, like, somebody will post a video of somebody like, oh yeah, we went out and I didn't like how this guy didn't have any idea, so he took me to this place and I didn't like this place, so I left. And then everybody's like, oh yeah, that's terrible, that's trash, that's cheap. And it's kind of like transactional. But then other people will come in and be like, oh yeah, me and my spouse for this many decades, we went to like a cheap regular place and we had a good time together. And it's like the debate between, like, if somebody is stable enough to provide, or if y'all just trying to have a fun time and build experiences together. And I'm like, I feel like both are important, but I wouldn't know how to approach a a conflicting situation like that either. So I'm just sit back and watch. And there's like so many different opinions about it, but like all of them are kind of valid and depending on if you're like being more selfish to like make sure you square it away, but also like if you're just trying to be like a loving and giving and generous person, like you might not worry about all of that. It's just like so many political, I guess, like politics to weigh out when
Mhm.
like in the olden days it was just, two people, they kind of seem compatible and they're gonna get together.
Right.
So it's a lot to think about, and I at some point gave up on thinking about it, but maybe with the justice falling in line with it, it's like something or things will balance out or something, and it
Yes.
make more sense if you just jump in and or align with your gut, trust your gut, and jump in.
Yes. Thanks. Thank you for saying that. I'm like, wow, just I relate because I'm like I see those same debates on social media, and it literally like even if they're like right back like back to back on the timeline, I'm like that person's right, and then, like the next tweet will like say something else about a different context, and I'm like they're right too, and I'm like the next person is right, like, and I've kind of like come to this place low key where I've been wondering, I'm like, is everybody entitled to like their own like desires in a relationship? Like do people get that? Like do we have the right, and maybe we don't know, is kind of like what I mean, to like desire certain experiences and front load those experiences, and then if those experiences garner enough like chemistry, longevity, and like juice between you and another person, does the type of relationship y'all have kind of like, is it like up to the people who are in the relationship, and it's like, because I'm like, if I agree with so many people personally, right, if I agree with so many people and I also agree with the basic thing of like the my own basic belief that everyone deserves love, then is are all these debates just a way for people to show like what they really like and like what they really want, and they're not sure, like maybe like they're not sure, kind of like how you said, because I feel that way sometimes too, where I'm like, I don't know how to approach this conversation, if I want to like set a boundary with someone or kind of set a context and be like, oh yeah, I want this to just be about us creating experiences, or I want a serious relationship, because 9 times out of 10 I won't know, like until I spend more time with that person. And it doesn't mean that I don't know what I want in love, but I'm like, I don't know if I want like a 3 to 5 year commitment. I don't know if I want to just like hang out and go to the movies with this person because they smell nice. And I'm like, I wonder if something like that is kind of like that's like causing us and like people to kind of feel like woo about love. Like if something is kind of being clicked into place, or like spirit is encouraging us to be like, don't worry, it's been confusing for a while, and I know, but I got you. It's kind of like the vibe that I'm getting from like the justice card right after the lovers. And then I also wonder too if it has to do with like getting justice for your heart. Like, okay, so like if you are a person who is like disappointed in a certain relational scheme or like a couple relationships in a particular way, then I wonder if it's like getting justice for your heart. Like sometimes love is about not getting what you didn't get in your last relationship, because that's toxic. But I mean, there's conscious ways to do that. But I wonder if it has something to do with um something about like your getting nudges and getting guidance and getting either messages on one's own version of love, and like what context, what type of person, what type of material circumstances, like you talked about, Tiff, would make that person feel the most loved, and how much are they willing to offer that in exchange for another person to feel loved. And it kind of feels like coming up with one's own terms is kind of like the vibe that I'm getting. I know I said a lot, but I'm like, I just wonder, I wonder if y'all are effing with that. Because I'm kind of happy about it personally. I'm like, lovers and the justice card, let's go. Like, let's fucking go. That's a vibe for sure. Yes, Tiff. And then like the rest of the cards actually kind of fit this narrative. So I'm like, listen, I do I do consider myself like a very down to Mars person where I'm like, okay, like let's not get high on the juice of like love coming, just like let it come to you. But there is something in this reading about like, I don't know if y'all ever heard the Corinne Bailey song. If you haven't, you might want to listen to it after this, but it's called Love is on its way. And that's what it kind of feels like is love is on its way. Yeah, Tiff says might even get back in the game and be optimistic. I love that. I love that. I love that. Sincerely. Okay, I just kind of want to pause for questions before I move on to the rest of the cards. And I'm trying to, Tiff, just so you know, I see you and I feel you and I hear you. Trying to be optimistic. So yeah, I'll get into the next card. The next card is the Nine of Wands in reverse. So this card is about mastering heat in general. This card represents a woman who has what the deck says captured the flame of the shaman and is like using it to like cultivate herself and like carve out her passions, like dividing or like, and it could be anybody, but this woman in particular is kind of harnessing her creative energy in this card and then like piecemealing it and like giving each piece of her creative energy a job so that it is accounted for, so that it is not leaking anywhere, so that her energy isn't going like boom, 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 all these different places. It's like she knows what her energy is allotted for, she knows what she wants to use it for, and it has a return rate that serves her and keeps her happy and healthy. So that's kind of like the general gist of this card, but it's in reverse. So what to do with a figure who's discerning, who is harnessing their kundalini reverse? To me, that speaks to it speaks to not quite being ready yet. And so I feel like this is kind of a beautiful counter, a wise counter to the lovers and the justice, where it's like love is coming, love is on its way, adoration is on its way, recognition is on its way. The things you need to like be in union with yourself, they're on their way and they're going to set things right and they're going to set you on the path. However, the Nine of Wands in reverse to me speaks to knowing if knowing the difference between whether or not you're ready for an influx of energies, either positive or outstanding or transformational. Like how ready are you? And if you ask yourself that question and you see that you're not quite ready yet, I feel like the Nine of Wands in reverse here is saying that that's okay. You know, like if you're feeling drained and depleted, especially in the context that we're talking about, like, right? So, like, we're talking about justice, kind of finding and helping you get the things you need for your heart to feel safe and loved. But it's like, what if your heart is not ready to feel that yet? What if you're drained and depleted from the last time you opened your heart? You know what I mean? What if you're like trying to like carve your passion and like figure out what's good for you and like the idea of a relationship with like and I feel that way sometimes where it's like you could like I see this with people, not so much myself, but I see this with people when they're just like on the like they're just on it. They have all these things going for themselves. They're like on top of themselves, like in the sense that they're the best version of themselves that they can be. And then like they let a relationship in or like they let one particular type of lover in and their whole life, not their whole life, but their whole sense of unity with themselves becomes totally destabilized. And to recover from that is so draining. It is such a drain on the heart. It is such a drain on the mind. It is such a drain on the spirit, the subtle body, the every part of you. It is. Hey, Julie. Tiff said, send it back to the earth to be refined and processed. Ashe. In regards to what you would do if you weren't ready for that flow of energy. Yeah. So what I wrote down in my notes is that you might be depleted and drained from your last chapter. So rest. Set the flame throwing aside, investigate some of your energy leaks, be kind to yourself, and recover. And I feel like that's really Ashe. Thank you for noticing, Julie. Yeah, and we're kind of delineating on the Nine of Wands right now in reverse. So, yeah, I feel like there's like nothing negative about this card. It doesn't feel like turn back around. To me, it feels like spirit gently helping us discern what we're ready for and what we think we're ready for, right? And I think like honestly, like when I pull these cards for myself, that's the best part. I'm like, I'll get this beautiful spread and like something, like spirit is time and space focused. And so I'll be like, oh my God, pull for me. Like I want to know what my path is gonna look like. And then like I'll be like, but am I ready for it though? And sometimes I'll get clarifying cards that show me no. And it's okay. I think it's fine. And I think it's also fine to cultivate your desire, right? Especially for somebody who does want a loving union, a divine partner, marriage, like all of these things. I really fucking hate when people separate them from like spiritual cultivation or spiritual like progress. When people are like, that's a distraction. I'm like, no, 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 no. It's part of it. And in fact, what I've learned in my time as a lover, quote unquote, is that the best relationships that I've had, y'all, to date have nothing to do with stuff that I've done or another person has done. When I answer and surrender to the principle of love, not only does love find me, I also find that I have been preparing for love as it was preparing for me. What do I mean by that? Like the container that you and that divine partner are going to exist in doesn't exist only when you guys are going to meet. It exists now. You know? Or no? Do you not know? Tell me if y'all are picking up what I'm putting down because I'm like, Ashe, Lexi. Lexi says that aligns. Tiff, Tiff says elusively, I am familiar with this experience. Me too. Me three. Yeah, and it's also part of like one of the most powerful parts of this reading that I did get was like my guides were like, "Are you going to spill?" Like my inner sense was like, "I'm going to be spilling tea on how to prepare for love before it finds you, before you even know of who the person is." And like not not through the realms of like trickery, and we'll get to that with one of the later cards because the warning is definitely in this spread. Spirit's like, don't you do what you think you need to. Don't be buying them spells off of Etsy. Don't you do it to try to trap nobody. This is like ethical sort of holistic way of like preparing the roost and preparing yourself for what you want. And I feel like I would advise this for anyone in any circumstance. So whether it's the pursuit of situating yourself for finding a loving partner, whether it's the pursuit of work and meaningful labor and meaningful contribution to the world, whether it's about resolution between people that you're already connected to, like this is advice that I would give hands down. Just prep for it. If that's what you want, prepare for it. And not just like visualize it. I mean, get up off of your ass and prepare for it. So yeah. So yeah, let's get into the next card. So yeah, we have the Ten of Discs, which actually kind of speaks to like what I was saying. Um, the Ten of Discs also can be translated to the Ten of Pentacles. If you're the type of person to like do your own research after you're in a divination space, I totally get it. And if you want to look it up, it's the Ten of Pentacles. But the Ten of Pentacles specifically represents transition on the physical plane. So again, we have this energy of justice, and if you're into deity work, right, ma'ats, like this principle that something is going to ripen on the, but with the 10 of discs now we have this confirmation that it's going to happen on the physical. And the 10 is also a transitional number in numerology. In a lot of different traditions in numerology, 10 represents a portal. Oh, I'm sorry. 10 represents the foundation of a portal. and the number 11, which is like 1 and 1, represent the portal. So 10 represents the things that need to come into fruition or be gathered or harvested or foraged in order for like a portal for change to open. And I know I'm using these mystical terms, but basically for transformation to take place, you know? So 10, the 10 of discs represents something ending so that something else may be born. In the physical picture of the card, you can see a woman being surrounded by other folks in her community. There's somebody helping the woman who's actually giving birth. They're like supporting her back. Someone is in front of her ready to catch the baby, which actually goes into like a deeper, actually esoteric symbol, but I won't get into it today. If you want to like go deep, 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 deep with me, I honestly, and I'm not saying this to be like shady, I would suggest you book a reading. They're donation based because that's when I really get to flex like my gnosis. But this picture of this woman surrounded by her community giving birth to me speaks about communal care. Um, it also speaks to wealth being contained within the power of the group energy. And so almost again, this reading is not about giving birth, but I mean, this reading is not about like falling in love and having a baby, right? But there is something about this that is routing our awareness. Like spirit wants to route our awareness to look at our and investigate and sort of observe the current ecosystem that we're a part of. And so if your goal, right, is like to be in union or to get a job or to kind of transition into a new state of just your inner self. I feel like the 10 of discs is pointing us to um, doing some external work, you know, viewing your community not only as a support system, but seeing if your community, as it stands right now, is the ripest environment to rebirth or birth this thing that you desire into, or if this is the ripest environment that would actually pour back into the thing that you're calling in, manifesting, or desiring for yourself. And so it's kind of like, I feel like the Nine of Wands is like inner work focus, just going to the card before this, right? And so it speaks to like discernment, like resting and recharging if you need to, cultivating your energy if you need to. But the 10 of discs actually, I think to me, speaks to observing your physical surroundings. Um, and just seeing. I don't get the sense that there's anything to be done as this card presents itself, or that there's anything that needs to um change. I think the 10 of discs is saying that the change is already taking place, but as but it's almost like encouraging us to use our foresight to see if what I'm hoping to bring into this world, the part of myself I'm hoping to even transition into, would be supported in this environment. And if not, do what you need to do. And if it is, then deepen in that, is kind of like what I'm getting from this. Lexi said in the chat, sometimes I kind of joke with myself and I'm like, with all this spiritual cultivation the last 2 years, I wonder who or what I'm preparing for. I wonder too. Sips tea. Hey, Adam. So yeah, I wonder if there are any questions or yeah, anything that comes up for y'all so far. We have a couple more cards to get into, and I think now that we know that the reading has a framework, I'm gonna zoom through these cards and then yeah, we'll go from there. Mm, yeah. Julie says it's interesting to me that the circle they create they created isn't closed. The empty portion at the bottom of the card, yeah. Mm. Yeah, and it goes into it some more in the booklet that um there's a story behind this, and I don't want to get too much into it, but because this container would like be like 2 hours long if I did. But essentially it's like tribal women from different tribes coming together in a common area to meet, and these things that they're holding in their hands are different baskets that have, I think they're baskets that have been woven representing their tribal, I don't want to say allegiance, but their tribal um, symbol, or like whichever tribe they particularly come from. And so it's almost like, because this lady, the woman in the center is like giving birth, it's almost like the like real juice behind this is the fact that the child is going to come out into a world, from the safe cocoon of its mother's womb into a community that is like showing that it's diverse and that it's enriched and that it's full and that there's people here to take care of it. But that also, I wonder if that's what the open space represents, right? Is that the child still has the free will and the wherewithal to cultivate themselves within that community and carve out their own path. So it gets like really, really deep. I'm glad that you brought that up, Julie, because it kind of forced me to like condense what would have been really, really long. So thank you. Oh, Tiff says maybe she was the closure of the circle, and everyone gets to take turns giving giving birth and holding a basket, and everyone has their own spot. I love that. Yeah, like this, the child is like the thing that completes the circle. Yeah. So many syncs right now happening in my mind. Yeah, curious if y'all have if there are any other questions or other stuff coming up for you guys. I'll take a sip of my water. And if not, um yeah, let's get into the next card. So the next card that we have, so we have this theme. We have the lovers, justice, nine of wands in reverse, 10 of discs. It's like spirit is kind of setting up a roadmap for us, which to me is like is how most of my readings go, y'all, to be honest. Some of them are predictive, most of the time it's just a roadmap. Um and so the 7 of swords in reverse is the next card. The 7 number represents inner processes, um of swords. So 7 of swords represents inner processes, mental sculpting, strategy, but this is in reverse. So we got a little bit of a tip coming in about discernment, right? And so earlier we got like the 9 of wands that was like, okay, discern what you have the capacity for. So the 7 of swords is talking about a different type of discernment and using your mind and using the mental frameworks that support you to your benefit, and allowing those swords to help you carve out different pathways in the realm of thought that help you gain clarity, you know? I mean, anybody can relate to the fact that if you're overwhelmed by thoughts, it's really hard to not only like make a decision, it's not only really hard to like follow through, but being overwhelmed by thoughts um can cloud you in so many ways, including cloud um the not only just like intuitive discernment, but your ability to like discern like quite literally, like, okay, if you're looking at a hamburger and you're looking at an apple, shit, I can't even use that context because it really doesn't matter. Either one works. But I'm just thinking about like this, being able to discern what is good for you, um, where you should go. Like this is about navigating the material world with your mind. And so like the 7 of swords in reverse I want to say that this card relates to being able to see through people's bullshit. Um, but I'll read what I have. This card signifies being able to see through people's games. Oh, okay, I agreed with myself. And honestly, seeing through people's bullshit. There we go. People build personalities around being avoidance, distracted, and basically don't want to take responsibility for themselves. Of course, this is from an egoic lens. Some people might embody sneaky energy because they want to, in some respects, maintain the protective shell that ego provides them. This card in reverse signifies letting them. Don't give anyone the rope, nor is it your job to kick away the chair, but be a witness as someone else gets entangled in their web of lies. Mm, yeah. So Lexi says maybe the cards together are like whole body discernment. Adam says, dang, so instead of maybe being the fox, we're the hens. Perhaps. It kind of like, how do I want to approach this? Again, if we're talking about like mental discernment, how can I widen that? Because I feel like mental discernment doesn't do it for me, but mental sculpting is like the word that I keep hearing, or strategy, and how like sometimes like the mind can come up with a strategy that only has one person's best interest in mind. Um, and that's okay, right? Like we need that to survive. Um, but this has to do with, I feel, especially coming from the 10 of discs, this has to do with like surveying the field. I feel like the guidance that was coming in was like kind of taking stock and observing with a 10 of discs. That is taking stock and observing, like what do your support systems look like? What does your ecosystem look like? How can you make changes to either deepen in the collective energy or collect shared group energy, or how can you disenmesh a little bit from like group energy and pave your own path? And so with the Seven of Swords in reverse, I feel like this speaks to the act of, or like the realization that comes from surveying your ecosystem or your world. And again, I'm not saying like there's ops out to get you, or like, oh my gosh, you got to bang this person down because they're lying to you. But I feel like what it's speaking to is about the web of illusion that is created when ego takes center stage when it comes to like mental strategy. So if I'm plotting for myself, right? If I'm writing down a to-do list, if I'm getting ready to go to the grocery store and I'm only thinking with my ego, then what I'm going to get is only going to satisfy me for that moment, like quite literally that time and space. And then after that, my ego is going to want something else, because that's the ego. The ego is ever fluctuating, it is expanding, it contracts, and it is part of the human experience. So I don't want to act like you don't need the ego. But I feel like what it's speaking to is like, if you're planning and plotting and you have been used to planning and plotting and making moves in your life based on ego, then, and if you're also witnessing other people do that, the Seven of Swords in reverse, like I like what you said, Adam, that like maybe we're the hens, maybe we're the fox, maybe we're not on the property at all. Maybe we're the artist who drew the card, who's who's not there at all, right? Like, so spirit's like, don't entangle yourself, right? And feel like it's your right and like prerogative to call people out and be like, that motherfucker's living inauthentically and da 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 da. I mean, unless they're affecting you directly, right? Then there's some like problem solving steps that you can take to like ripen that relationship. But it's like, don't go out there looking for people's illusions just so that you can feel good about how like refined and awakened you are. Does that make sense, y'all? Like, because I feel like that's where that whole like give people, don't even like, there's this whole idea, right? Like I just gave somebody the rope to hang themselves. I just kicked away the chair. And it's like, okay, I'm like detached, but I'm also like watching this person's downfall. Spirit's like, actually minus yourself from that equation, which is really difficult to do. So I don't want to act like it's something easy to do, but it's like, and we'll get to this when we talk about the Three of Swords. But yes, I do feel like ultimately the Seven of Swords in reverse is not is encouraging us to get out and start doing the work of resolving some of the mental rigmarole of like strategizing for yourself, only satisfying your ego, seeing other people doing it, thinking that it's okay for you to do it. It's like, no, that's what Spirit is saying. No, don't do it. Be better for you, for your own self, your own sake. I forget what you said, Tiff, about the unseen chef knife. It's a big inside joke. Y'all should join the broom. Just fucking saying. Yeah, Ahmed says your read lines up with thank you for saying that. Yeah. Julie says that aligns reworking what I'm actually responsible for. Yeah. I feel like it's that. I feel like that's part of it for sure. Yeah, and Ahmed says if our energy is already dissipated and scattered, let's be mindful of how much attention we give to the bullshit around us. Recognize it, but don't get caught up in it. Yes, that is well said. Recognize it, don't get caught up in it. Don't feel victimized by it, especially, right? And I feel like that's what the 10 of discs was really solidifying our awareness into. Like you, whoever this reading applies to, are building a foundation. You're preparing the roost for a world that you want to be in, a world that you want to see, a relationship that you want to be in, a job that you love. And so like if you kind of look at other people or kind of start to absorb or pay all of your focus and attention to those who are have not gotten to that place yet, then like where do you think that would take your attention and awareness, you know? So this is I do feel like ultimately this is about mental focus and mental strategy. Whereas the 9 of Wands was about like knowing what you have the capacity for, knowing your physical body's limits. This is about knowing your mental limits and like pushing them a little bit further and having a little bit of using again that foresight to support your own self. Yes, we're gonna get there, Adam. Thank you for saying that. I'm gonna read it out loud. Adam says, I can't quite put words to it, but the way you describe that interplay of illusion and detachment makes me think of Rahu and Ketu, the lunar nodes, and I see the moon is in this spread too. Thank you for saying that. Mm, I agree. And Ahmed says maybe that's where the justice card fits into. I think so. I really do. So let's go to the next card. So, um, yeah. Again, this kind of just goes back to like what we were talking about, right? So like focus, having strategy for like your larger vision, your larger goal, not just like what I need to eat and what I need to what time I need to go to sleep and when I should do this and when I should do this. It's like, okay, so we have the Chariot card in reverse. And so I think the Chariot card is just speaking to because the Chariot card is about discipline, forward movement, clear vision. And so this being in reverse, it doesn't mean that like we're not thinking forward and we're not moving forward. I think it's just a re-emphasis um, from spirit that's like, I'm telling you, cultivate your mental energy because otherwise you will fall into, or like anyone is susceptible to a pattern where they become undisciplined, they become unfocused, they take their eyes off the prize, so to speak. And I think that the Chariot in reverse speaks to that, that there is this clear path. Maybe not so clear from the mind's eye perspective, but like clear in a like a holistic way. So like pieces are coming together in a nonlinear fashion. And I feel like the Chariot card in reverse speaks to like trust the motion, trust the direction, trust the what's the word I'm looking for? The cardinal direction or focus that you're being pulled towards, trusting the magnetism of the universe, trusting the magnetism of the earth. And it feels like a response, right? Instead of relying on mental strategy, maybe rely on this like inherent magnetism that pulls and pushes us through different experiences, through different parts of the world, through different parts of our lives. I mean, hell, like you might even have a regular coffee shop that you go to. And this harkens back to like building the container in advance, right? Switch it up, go to a different coffee shop. Just so you can, like, in gentle ways, start to like kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Sand down. You can start to sand down the parts of your mental strategy that or your mind that might be calcified by like taking your strategy outside the box a little bit by doing, I think, little things. I think little things like that work not only for me, but I think they can work for anyone if you're manifesting an open pathway. Even if you're not sure where you want to take that pathway, but you just want to clear it. I think that that's kind of what the chariot card is speaking to, like trusting your direction, trusting the things that you're called to, trusting the places that you're pulled to, having focus and discipline with the things that you care about, that you're dedicated to, that you're committed to, and also don't let old mental patterns, yeah, like stop you from continuing to move forward, or even like small setbacks. And I feel like that's kind of what the chariot card is really pointing to. I wanted to say more, but I think I'm going to stop and pause there. Oh, can y'all still hear me? Okay, cool. Yes. Okay, Adam says, "Wow, I love this reverse chariot read so much. I often connect the chariot to the body, manifesting in the world, and what you're describing feels like it's calling us to the vaster bodies we're all a part of, such as Earth herself." Absolutely. Oh, wow. Yeah, and we'll really get into it because I feel like you might also, Adam, be feeling the moon card, because that's quite literally the guidance for the moon card, which was at the bottom of this deck, which is like again the thing to anchor this reading. And it when I was typing out the divination, that's exactly what I got, like honoring your cycles, speaking to your cycles, being parts of larger cycles, and welcoming in like newer cycles while also respecting the cycles that serve and are like supporting like the circadian rhythm of you being alive on earth, let's just say, for lack of better words. Like, so it's like, yeah, like for me it kind of feels like there's like some larger theme being braided together, so I'm happy that you brought us there. Is there any questions before I move on? Oh yeah, I see some people typing. Hmm. Mm, Ashe. Adam says you used the word gravity earlier, and I believe, and it feels so potent in this context. That's kind of what it feels like, honestly. I mean, I know that, shameless plug, um, Nobu and I have been having conversations, um, both online and then like in the ethers, about gravity, memory, and time. And as y'all know, I won't speak for Nobu, but what I'll describe our collaboration is like we really do play in the realms, like a lot of them, and it does feel like there's this collective impulse, whether it's out of, for me personally, from my perspective, either boredom or just the desire for change, whatever it is. There's this like cosmic impetus, I would say, for people to yeah, connect to these like larger cycles. And so I feel like this spread is speaking to that. I'll just run down what I wrote for the Three of Swords before we get into the moon and before we wrap, because I feel like y'all get the gist. This was a very like, there's a lot of continuity here, but I do just kind of want to yeah, give some shine to the cards so that each message can have its time. And so um yeah, so we have the Chariot, and then we have the Three of Swords. The Three of Swords represents synthesis, mental energies arising to be sorted, difficulty preceding harmony. And so it speaks to separate egos engaging in the battle of wits because it's more comfortable than being vulnerable. So I'll read it again. The Three of Swords speaks to, so you see like three figures dressed as the bird, the ancient bird woman, which I won't get into today. And so they're like kind of mimicking the bird woman. And in this, and these three women, they're fighting. And I actually found out today they're fighting over a lover. Sips tea. Who child? So they're fighting over lover. And yeah, those three women represent the separation of egos and how like being in like really really committed to like your egoic perspective can sometimes elicit a battle of wits. um it also might feel more comfortable for some of us to be in our ego than it is to be vulnerable. And so I wrote I wrote here, are you feeling trapped by being too cool for school? I don't know why that amused me so much. This gif, I don't know why it's making me laugh so hard, y'all. Oh my gosh. But I don't know if anyone can relate. If you do, feel free to drop an emoji in the chat. There's no shame here. We have some emojis in the chat. Ooh, ooh. Tiff says in the chat, gotta be more chalant. I love that. Adam says, trapped by being too cool for school. Damn, that explains a lot of dynamics. Yeah, man, it does. And I don't want to throw shade either, but I'm like, when I see people like that, and I've been like that since I was a kid, I'll be honest, like when I see people who are like stoic, or like literally like pulling themselves, like keeping themselves from having fun. And I've been there too. So I won't lie, like I've been in those places as well. But I start to like, or I have to stop myself from feeling bad for people who whose like ego game is playing out in that particular way. Cause I mean my ego plays too. But it's like, dang, all this life, all this wonder, all this yaka ya, and like we just want to be like too cool for school, like too cool to be like vulnerable with ourselves and like with other people. And I also understand that there's another side to this, right? Where it's like, okay, any wise person, whether they read tarot or not, would tell you you ain't got a friendly bob with just anybody. And that's a New Orleans saying. Like being a friendly bobber means like you just say you just cool with everybody, and it's like, so that's not the point here. But I feel like with these three figures looking the same, um in the card, looking the same, all carrying swords, they're actually all connected to by that string of daisies at the bottom of the card. So it's like they all want the same thing. They all, I mean, in their case, literally want the same person, but we're not going to go there. But they want the same thing. They're equipped with the same tools. They all have the same outlook. They all worship the same goddess, like quite literally the bird goddess, but they're fighting with each other. Right. And that to me, if I was on the outside standing in of a squabble like that, even if they were my three favorite people, I'd be like, wow, they don't quite know yet how much they can help each other. They don't know quite yet how much support they can provide each other and insights. And that's, look, going to the Seven of Swords in reverse, that's okay. You don't have to be the one to tell people how to do the thing at all, ever. But I think what this is kind of speaking to is a little bit of what I said earlier. Like you might even see situations like this sprout up around you, either on social media. You might even, excuse me, you might even like see squabbles happening around you. And so it's almost like, if you can, try to be, I don't want to like speak that into anyone's life, but if you can and you see arguments or disagreements arise, try to be the observer. Try to learn from what you're witnessing. If you're a person in conflict, try to learn from that conflict. I'm not saying conflict is coming down the pipeline, but there is also a principle, like a spiritual principle in this card, that conflict will precede harmony. And so the more agile you get in conflict, the more used to synthesizing and integrating energy, mental energy and information, the more you'll be quicker on your feet when conflict does arise. So this card speaks to ultimately getting in touch with one's own emotions. And I wrote, because it can't be pettiness that carries you forward. Julie says in the chat, that's how I feel when people refuse to dance. Like, come on, shake some ass. Me too. Me too, Julie. I've left events when people are actually not dancing. I'm like, not only am I not going to be the only one, I'm not going to bless y'all with my presence. I'm out. So Lexi says sisterhood wounds. Yes. Yes. Adam says this reminds me of something I think Nobu once said about a fight from a certain from certain perspectives looking like a dance. Yes. That really actually because the figures in this card also look so similar, have similar goals, have similar skills. I mean, if you look at it from a vaster perspective, it probably from a quantum perspective looks like one person dancing. But in separation and in like ego, we see all these different parts playing themselves out. Yes, Tiff says you gotta be excuse me, gotta be trained in resolving dissonance, part of getting ready for this new container with someone else. Yes, the Ashe. Yeah, because it's like, do I want to say this? No, I'll leave this at the container because I don't want to be here for like I would keep y'all here for like 45 more minutes. But exactly that, Tiff. Being agile and being well versed in resolving dissonance is also part and parcel of, I think, like basic relational skill sets. Like, Ashe. Adam says, whoa, the quantum dance is a powerful imagery. Ashe. Let me take a sip of my water. I'm also curious if anyone has any questions at the moment. My throat was getting a little dry, so I'm glad I took a sip of water. If not, we can also move on to the last card. Well, last card and then the oracle. So the last card that was also at the bottom of this deck is the moon card in reverse. The moon represents the unconscious, the dream world, things that transcend rational sense making, your personal biorhythm, cycles, and temperaments are things that help you swim through the waters that the moon is constantly pulling and in some respects is responsible for. And so with the moon in reverse, I think it just speaks to, yeah, what is the possibility of all of us, each person running life from moving in life, being inspired in life by unconscious urges that have not come to the surface, have not been revealed to the light of the sun yet, in order to have the clarity that that impulse needs to materialize in the physical. So it's interesting because I think we kind of like can get the vibe of like what the moon card is saying here. And it is that, like, kind of tracking your cycles, tracking your biorhythm, noticing how much sleep you're getting, noticing the contents of your dream. And the moon card, I will also say the moon card is not as responsible or takes on the work of meaning making. Um, the moon card, the moon itself, it, I don't think, for me at least, from my perspective, is not responsible for the rationalization of these like unconscious things. It's just about that like impulse, and it's just about the flow, and it's just about that kind of like crystallization that we can experience when we realize that the watery, non-static parts of life, I'm not going to say the moon is always responsible for it, but the moon as a celestial object is constantly pulling the tides of earth, pulling the water in our body, pulling the lymph, moving the blood. And so for me, this feels like an observation card. Like, I can't say that there's stuff that the moon wants you to do. I think the moon just wants you in this, in reverse, especially, wants you to flow. He like track things without putting a why to them, you know? And the first example too that came up for me when I was writing this down was like how how personal do I want to get with this? I was just thinking about how like sometimes in the past I used to like have days where I just wasn't feeling up to it, and like my family would ask me what was wrong and I would kind of be a little bitchy to them. And then like a couple of days later I would come back to them and like apologize and be like, "Oh my god, it's cuz I was like PMSing or like on my period." Which is all true, right? But I remember at some point I stopped doing that. Like I stopped blaming or like stopped pointing to my moon cycle, my personal moon cycle, as or blaming it or like kind of putting the work of when I am unconscious on that part of my cycle. Not because I wanted to like liberate myself and like free bleed. I mean, I do and I did. But that wasn't the reason why I did that in particular. It was almost like I just wanted to see what would happen with my cycle, my moon cycle and my other cycles if I didn't attach meaning to it. And I'm sure some of y'all are like familiar with that process where sometimes like you just like let something flow and let it be that, as opposed to it being part of this like larger constructed rational narrative. It just like is what it is, which I think Ahmed said earlier that the justice card is telling us like literally everything is just what it is. But I don't say that in a reductive way. So I wonder if y'all feel me. Julie says that it's been coming up for me too. Yes, absolutely, Ahmed. So Tiff says I try to be different every next cycle, and it is a challenge. It is. It is. And Ahmed says not reductive, but accepting way. Yeah, that's. I think that that's also it too. Like accepting. I feel like for me, with the example that I gave, I just kind of did that where I'm like, I accepted like every month, unless I'm involved in behaviors, that I'm gonna, my moon cycle is gonna come. Like it's kind of like tried and true. It might come a couple days early, couple days later. But I kind of just started to accept that that was part of a larger cycle that's part like my whole body is a part of, as opposed to being like my womb, this one womb is sorry, I know we're like harping on the menstruation example, but I mean there's so many other examples like sleep, right? um there's so many other examples like food. There are other cycles like one's routine, and so um I feel like the moon card is kind of encouraging us to be part of that process of watching our, just like the moon does in the sky, is like looking down and like watching us and like pulling our liquids in our body, like watching yourself with that same reverence and same respect. And like the moon does not attribute meaning to when she has to do her job or they have to do their job, right? The moon has an assignment in the cosmos and it's doing that. And like your body has an assignment in this larger orchestra and it's doing that. And it's not doing it to spite you, you know? And so I feel like that's why the emphasis, for me at least, on the biorhythms is coming up, is because it's like your body also might crave certain things for different seasons. Um, the body might crave certain things. Just because like it needs to like express some sort of like metabolic function. I would say just go with it, don't attach meaning. Every emotion doesn't have to be like a crescendo or an arc in one's own personal transformation. Sometimes it's just a feeling, you know. And I feel like that's been really 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 key for me. Yeah, Julie says I've been challenging myself to express a feeling or a need or a desire without attaching a story to it. Ashe. Ashe. That's it right there, without attaching a story to it. Tiff says, there's a yearly cycle when I might be hangry and sleep deprived, and I will have to strive to be kind and patient in that state. If you can be, or just be sleep deprived and hangry, bruh, you know? But let it be known that it doesn't mean anything about your character. And how you act can always like you can always flow and like repolarize, not just with you, Tiff, but anyone. It's like you can flow and repolarize. And in other words, yeah, the story sometimes that we attach to emotional sensations and bodily sensations can actually take away from the body's inherent communication system with all the different ecosystems that it's part of. Yeah, dang. Julie says, and I feel like that ties into keeping the mystery alive. Yep. Adam says, love this read on lessons from the moon. Me too. Tiff says, right. Julie says, exactly. Because then where's the room for updates? Mm-hmm. Ashe. Tiff said, being kind and patient with myself. Ashe. Mm. Adam says, the narrative making actually can make the body an object. Oh, yeah. Whoa. Whoa. And I've been meditating a lot lately on how I won't say we, how people can sometimes unconsciously objectify themselves. Because I've been doing a lot of personal work. I'll just be transparent on internalized misogyny, not only just in my body, but like my different lineages, the different schools of thought that have influenced me. And I've come to that conclusion a couple times where I'm like, dang, so many things that we think are speaking the truth and and just that we think is just standing up for ourselves and describing this or naming this and exerting our right as human beings is actually dehumanizing us. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm sorry. I'm like, I had that realization like a couple of times over the course of this month. And I'm like, dang, another day, another piece of the collective unconscious to sift through. But I do think it's that. Yeah, I do think it's narrative making. And I think actually, just to tie it back to the reading, I do actually think that this is the crux of what we're talking about today. Um, and I'm going to read the She of the Lotus card, which is the oracle card towards the end. I'm going to share the picture in the chat just because it is really evocative to me. And then I'm going to read what I wrote. So, She of the Lotus, what I wrote for this card is Accept your shadows before you approach and reproach them. Investigate if shame, guilt, or fear might be motivating you. Sea of the lotus speaks to the environment that that lotuses grow in, the mud. And as admirable as that is, it's also part of the gift the lotus offers us, the sediment of the past. This card encourages us to take that sediment or that dirt and allow it to fertilize your path forward. In other words, if you're feeling stuck, today's message, and this divination for the week, of course, encourages you to acknowledge and understand the why behind it while also focusing on reassimilating various parts of yourself, whether conscious or unconscious, into a more holistic framework. So, She of the Lotus is a card that really focuses on the higher chakras for those who work somatically. For those who don't, this is about mental processes. For those who do both, y'all feel me? That I feel like that She of the Lotus is also illustrating a figure, just as a character, right? A figure who is awakening to higher wisdom, um, vaster wisdom, or a more comprehensive school of wisdom, and how and she represents a being who shows us that like beautiful things can grow in really I would say like traditionally seen as precarious situations. I'm also hearing the diamond in the rough kind of adage here. And so it's about kind of this figure that has triumph and has the ability and the skill set and also the wherewithal and also the trust to grow in any circumstance that they're put in. And I also feel like because of the theme of the cards in the Mother Peace deck, Spirit really wants us to know that not only is your process like being seen, but that all parts of your process, the past, the present, and the future, who you had to be in those different time periods or those different chapters of your life are fully recognized, are fully seen, and I would say are like begging excitedly, maybe not begging, excitedly waiting to be reintegrated yeah in this holistic framework, which is so interesting because honestly, like I'll just say it, the broom containers have this like winding um cyclical way of sinking containers wise. Like I mean, this is a market, so many people are offering different things in here, but I will say the way that this reading has synced up for me with Adam's archetypical hour, with Nobu's Why Am I Like This, the way that this even synced up with the book club. So for me, when things have that crescendo effect of like, okay, there's a sign here, there's a sign here, it's really wise to take notice. So I know that this divination is going to be serving me for a while. Um, and I just want to thank y'all because I'm like, it feels really big and feels really heavy, but I also have this sense of each respective person, whether you're here in the container or listening asynchronously, is being seen through it, regardless of what it is. So, yeah, this was great, guys. This was so fun. I'm going to let Craig go. Um, so, yeah, if you're tuning in to the podcast, thank you again. See you next week. Um, check out the podcast, all the other episodes on the podcast, and live your life. Bye.